We are back in business. The adults are in charge, and Donald Trump has officially been sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. And of course, he's coming into power with unprecedented popularity. If you check out over here from CBS of all places, right? They're saying that 60% of Americans are saying they're optimistic about Donald Trump's presidency, and 40% are pessimistic. Now, breaking it down by race, you have white people, 63%, very optimistic, 37%, not so much. Black voters, 49 to 51, Hispanic, 61 to 39. So even though Donald Trump only got like 12% of the black vote, 49% are optimistic about his presidency, all right? Proving that, yes, he has made some big inroads, some giant gains among that community. Breaking it down by age, apparently, the younger you are, the more excited you are about Donald Trump being president, because what we've seen recently is the young people saying, oh, there's not much of a future. I'll never buy a home. I'll never make as much money as my parents. I will not have the same lifestyle that I have grown up accustomed to, essentially, right? And as you can see, 18 to 29, 67% optimistic, 30 to 44, 62%, 45 to 64, 60%, and over 65, 51%, all right? But still a majority. Breaking it down by males and females, 65% optimistic among males, 55% optimistic among women. And breaking it down by the political divide, Democrats, only 30% are optimistic, Republicans, 94%, independents, 54%, all right? So obviously, there is a clear mandate for Donald Trump coming in that, yes, we want his policies. Everything he said, we're okay with. Please enact it on the public. The only people who don't like it, apparently, are black women Democrats, okay, if you break it all down by those numbers. Oh my goodness, it is good to see this return to normalcy. But of course, let's now juxtapose that to Joe Biden's numbers upon him leaving office.
But these numbers for Biden seem especially low.
Yeah, they're historically, though. They're, I dare say, historically awful. What am I talking about here? Well, job approval at the end of the first term. I'm just looking amongst those who lost or didn't run for re-election. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to see which is the lowest number on your screen right now. And an average of polls, my average, Joe Biden's at 38%. He's actually lower than Donald Trump was at the end of his first term. Remember, at the end of his first term, everyone was saying Donald Trump's political career is over. Joe Biden's approval rating's even lower than Trump's was by just a point. He's lower than Jimmy Carter, who was at 44% by the end of his presidency. Not even close to George H.W. Bush, who was at 56%. Saw a nice rebound. But the bottom line is this. Joe Biden came in to end the Donald Trump reign in this country, right? End Donald Trump's political career. And all that's ended up happening is Joe Biden has managed to end up at a lower approval rating at the end of his first term than any president on record, Jessica.
And how are people reflecting on his entire presidency at this moment?
Yeah, so if you think this approval rating number is bad, take a look at this particular number. All right, a good or great president at the end of their terms. Well, Barack Obama, 52% of Americans thought he was a good or great president at the end of his presidency, 2017. Donald Trump, very much behind Barack Obama at 36%. But look at how low Joe Biden is. My goodness gracious, you can't really get lower than 25% and are polarized there, because the bottom line is there's going to be a bunch of Democrats who would say that Biden was a good or great president no matter what he did. But yet it's only a quarter of the country who believes that Joe Biden was a good or great president. It is the lowest number since AP Nork started tracking this back at the end of Barack Obama's second term. Bottom line is Joe Biden goes out a very unpopular man at the end of a 50-plus year political career.
It is. It's so interesting. And there's so many questions, too, about, like, are we so more divided now than we were back in 2017? Is it Joe Biden? There's a lot there to chew on.
Yeah.
I do want you to talk us through Trump's popularity at this point.
Yeah. So if Joe Biden's numbers are at his lowest point, right, Donald Trump's are right near his top point. We have a little thing up here. I'm so tall, I was managed to actually bump it. Look at this. Trump's record favorable rating. You know, you go back 4 years ago, he was at 38%. Look at where he is today, 47%. That is the highest favorable rating Donald Trump has ever registered in an average of polls. So what we're dealing with is something very interesting, whereby, as I was saying, Joe Biden's at his worst point. Donald Trump is actually at his best point, being with this such a high favorable rating. One other little last thing I will point out, because I want to get to the forecast a little bit is just take a look at this. Will Trump be a good president? In January of 2017, you saw 48% for Donald Trump. Look at where we are today. A majority expect that Donald Trump will be a good president. So expectations for him are quite high. We'll see if he's able to meet those expectations, Jessica.
Yeah.
So the main thing I want to point out there, of course, Joe Biden being historically low, the lowest polling president in history, or at least since they started taking these numbers, okay? Now, Donald Trump, his numbers were nothing to brag about, but remember, that was 4+ years of him being bashed constantly by all of the mainstream media networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, right? Every single person out there hated Donald Trump, and his coverage was over 90% negative, according to the RNC research, okay? 90%. Every single story when you turned on your television, if you were not paying attention to anything from the right-wing media, from the non-legacy media, right? Every single story was pretty much guaranteed to be a complete negative, okay? And even with that, Joe Biden, despite having the exact opposite scenario where every single network, every single pundit and talking head out there was running cover for him up until the point they could no longer hide his mental decline, all right? His numbers are even lower. All right. And now, of course, it comes out that even though Donald Trump is coming in with unprecedented popularity, for him, that 48%, 56% expect him to be doing very well. So even people who don't agree with him politically, people who didn't vote with him, people who don't think he was going to be necessarily the best president, they still think he's going to do a good job. All right. And this is all because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats and the leftists, which took over the party, are that bad. Their policies are that unpopular. But of course, if you don't recognize how good Joe Biden actually was, that was your problem.
From the American people about this fragility of democracy versus the price of eggs?
So, Michael, in my reporting all of last year, what became clear, right, was that it was about the economy, the economy, the economy. You know, speaking with economists over last year, they were like, this is a great economy. But people are believing the narrative that they're being told that this is a disastrous economy. It's a disastrous economy. So people are expecting, because they have believed this rhetoric of, I'm going to take care of everything and I will lower the price of eggs. And what we do know is that building detention camps, right, and seeing screaming children who are being taken from their mothers or fathers, all of that is going to have no impact on the question of the economy. So I don't think that Donald Trump is going to have a lot of wiggle room in terms of the time that those voters are going to give him. Mm-hmm. Now, you also have to understand that, as Melissa was saying, you know, and I've been saying ad nauseum, right? If there was the amount of criminality that Donald Trump and his cohort has been talking about in terms of crime is out of control because of undocumented immigrants, we would not have an immigration problem. We would have a crime problem. And we don't have a crime problem. Crime has been falling as per FBI and Justice Department statistics over the past 30 years. So what people are getting ready for is, yeah, it's going to be unleashing. I'm thinking about 2017. What happened then, the reporting that was coming in of immigration agents going into courthouses and courtrooms, denying it. And then, of course, it was true. We're going to continue to see this. The amount of human suffering, Michael, is something that all of us are trying to sit with because it's going to be real. But also, we all know here that Donald Trump did not get a mandate. This was not an overwhelming victory. He is not going to have this extraordinary amount of love and support that's going to keep him going while all he's talking about is, undocumented immigrants that are committing crimes.
How many times do I have to say it? Yes, the stock market is booming. In other words, the biggest companies in America are making a whole lot of money. But when you go to the grocery store and you see that inflation is not down, that prices are not down, you go and see that interest rates are not down, you see that there's a shortage of houses in this country, then yes, you recognize the economy is not, in fact, good, despite how well the elites are doing, despite how well the big corporations corporations are doing, okay? People can tell by how they live their own lives whether or not something is good or something is bad. We don't need to have the arbiters of truth over at MSNBC to tell us something is good in order to recognize it. And of course, she had to get the little jab in there about crime is actually going down. No, it's not. The FBI had to, of course, readjust their numbers, showing a violent crime increase of 4% as opposed to a drop of 1.9%. Not to mention, many states don't even use the mechanisms the FBI use to tabulate all of that crime. So it is being massively underreported. These leftist people are morons, they're idiots, and they're just trying to sell the spin that Biden was actually really good. You just don't know it. And Trump, of course, is going to be really, really bad rounding up those people who, yes, are criminals. If you came into this country illegally, you just have some that are much more violent than others. But of course, another reason Joe Biden is the most unpopular president ever is because he didn't even know what he was doing, as is revealed here by Speaker Mike Johnson.
The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, "The speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone?" And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, "Oh, no, he did it." So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office, right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, "Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, "Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order 3 weeks ago." And he goes, "No, I didn't do that." And he's arguing with me. I said, "Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that." And he goes, "Oh, you talk about natural gas." "Yes, sir." He said, No, you misunderstand." He said, "What I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG." I said, "No, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security." It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country?
So yes, I have no special love or trust for Mike Johnson, but this would explain an awful lot. If Joe Biden is just signing whatever executive order is being published and put in front of him because he doesn't have any clue what's actually going on, then yeah, everything kind of snaps into place, doesn't it? Because the only other explanation is that he actually really is trying to sell out America, which I wouldn't put it past Joe Biden also, all right? So yes, who was running the government? It wasn't Joe Biden, because we all know he was incredibly mentally deficient. It was the deep staters. It was his handlers. It was possibly Jill Biden, Barack Obama, whoever the case was, all right? But Joe Biden was clearly not in charge. Of course, all of this should be taken with a huge grain of salt, unless, of course, you're actually looking at the results of everything that happened under Joe Biden. So yes, Donald Trump is back, and thank goodness for that, because hopefully we can get some sanity, some common sense back in the White House and fix this nation. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.